Hello, everybody. This is Eric Songer, and welcome to the first ever Second Floor Therapy podcast. So, what is this all about? Well, for 2 years, I've been doing a podcast every week where I've been talking about what's happening in the Chask Middle School West Band Department. And last summer, I took the summer off. This summer, I thought I should continue this because there's this thing going on in my school called therapy. And where that came from is actually two students that just graduated from Chaska and Chanhassen High School, Gracie and Tally. And about 4 years ago, they were in my advisory. And we had these things called block advisory where we had this curriculum that we were just breezing through. I had some of the brightest kids in the school. They were all web leaders. Web stands for where everybody belongs. And it's students who are 8th graders who are mentoring 6th graders. And so we would have some downtime during this block advisory. And so what we would do is we would just talk about things going on in our lives. So, we'd talk about grades, we'd talk about homework, difficulty of classes. We would talk about stresses at home, parents, siblings. We talk about drama at school with friends and boys and girls. We talk about the political landscape of our country. We would talk about social issues. We talk just anything imaginable, school rules, community laws, the way people treat each other. And one of the days, Gracie and Tally said, "Hey, this is great. We should have therapy every day." And that name stuck. And the second floor aspect of it is my classroom's on the second floor. And so over the years, it's become second floor therapy. And even though Tally and Gracie in that 8th grade class are now graduates and going off to college, that tradition has continued now in my band room now for 4 years. So this year, I decided to make a little bit more of a presence for Second Floor Therapy. There's now an Instagram site that you can follow called Second Floor Therapy. I've been trying to post some of the posts from there onto my Twitter account at Eric Songer. And I've not been doing a very good job of this, but I'm trying to blog more at my ericsonger.blogspot account. So you can check all those things out. But over the summer, I thought since I'm not going to be doing what's happening in the Chask Middle School West Band Department each week, even though we do have a summer program and there are some things going on, I thought I would talk about some issues just going on in the lives of middle school kids, issues I see in the world of education, sometimes music education. And I thought each podcast would be just fun to put onto my YouTube site here, Mr. Songer's channel. So I'm going to start off today by talking a little bit about students who are in the arts. It's something that I think is on the mind of every music teacher, every art teacher, every dance teacher, theater teacher. And I'm not going to really get into the importance of the arts today or necessarily what should be required and my thoughts on that. I mean, that might be a topic for another day. But I'm going to talk a little bit today about students and people, and when people study the arts and get involved in the arts, what it does to us. And, one of the things that people usually think of when we talk about studying music in the schools or the arts in the schools is we talk about, students who do that get better grades and they get better test scores. And I'm not going to deny that. I think it's actually true. But one thing I don't like is that we use that for the rationale for why we teach the fine arts in the schools. We shouldn't be teaching the arts simply because it helps kids in other subjects and it raises test scores to make the school look better. We're doing the arts for many more important reasons than that. So again, I'm not denying that, and yeah, it's absolutely true. And is it not one reason to be involved in the arts? Yeah, sure. I mean, if it's going to make you a better person in other subjects, why not? So, but I want to get into a little bit about the type of person the typical music or art or theater or dance kid is, literature, people who study the arts, have a passion for the arts, and want to get better at them. And I see a lot of qualities in kids who study the arts, and I'm not going to go through the whole list here, but there's some I just want to touch on here real quick before I get into the meat and potatoes of this podcast. First of all, the level of creativity in kids that study the arts is incredible. I'm just amazed at not just their musical creativity, the kids in my class, but the way they go through life thinking differently. They're able to think outside the box. They're able to come up with answers that other kids who maybe just don't have that creative part of their brain developed as much aren't able to come up with. They're able to think a little more colorfully, come up with solutions that maybe other people can't, and develop ideas that help people around them and help us as a culture. I always say, when people develop smartphones, um, you had to have a lot of creative thought in order to get to the point where you have these things today. But once you have the phone developed, then other people can replicate it. They go, oh, I see what you did there. So I think it's really important that we have people that develop things and are able to come up with new ideas to make our culture move forward. Another thing kids in the arts do is teamwork. And I know you see that in athletics too and in many other classes, but it's a special kind of teamwork. When you're playing in, let's say, a brass quintet, or you're singing in an a cappella group, or playing in a string quartet, or you're doing a small one act play with like six different actors in the cast, you have to really bond together. You have to trust each other. You have to know each other's strengths and weaknesses. You have to pick each other up. You have to celebrate each other when you do well, and you work together to make your production, your performance greater than the sum of its parts. And that's special. That's special when you have that kind of thing in the arts. Another thing, and I kind of already alluded to it with creativity, is problem solving. I think when you have creative ways to think about how to come upon a solution for a problem, you're going to have a much better way of getting there. You develop skills in problem solving because when you're in the arts, you come upon many problems that you have to find a solution for. So you get good at it. You get experience doing it. Persistence, not giving up, learning from your failures. In the arts, it's a constant battle. I mean, you're always not living up to what you want to do because you're pushing yourself, or you have a coach or a director or whatever. You have a teacher, you have somebody who's pushing you, and you end up pushing yourself because of that. And you're not going to give up. And none of us are perfect. We're all human. We're 100% is not something you can achieve as a human, but you can come awfully darn close. And as musicians and artists and actors and dancers, we strive to learn from our failures to and achieve the best we can. And probably the most important thing I want to bring up is kindness. And this is what I'm really going to focus on today, because I think sometimes I hear in school the kind of kid who's in music, the band kid, the music kid, the arts kid. And, what does that mean? And it means all those things I just talked about, but I think one of the biggest things it is it's kindness. And all those other things I just talked about, I could kind of explain how the arts gets you there. But it's really kind of interesting how music kids, art kids, dance kids, theater kids, fine arts kids are kind. And now there's exceptions, and as I go on today, there's definitely exceptions. And am I stereotyping? Am I kind of unfairly grouping together? Maybe to an extent, but I've been doing this teaching thing for over 20 years, and I walk up and down the hallways. I walk into the lunchroom. I supervise lunch, or I'm in the lunchroom a lot. I see what's going on the buses and in the bus loop as kids are waiting for buses and are getting off the bus. And I'll tell you what, there's a difference. There's a difference. Year in, year out, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, all 3 grades I teach, there is a difference. So just keep in mind, I'm not trying to say a kid who's not in the arts is not these things I just said. I mean, they're very capable of. But, let me start with this. So the discipline that kids have, I guess not the persistence thing. Discipline is another thing, I guess, as far as how kids work hard at stuff. I see that in kids who are in arts too. But I'm talking about the kids who break rules in the schools. Um, the kids who are in the arts tend to not be rule breakers, and the ones who are, a lot of times they are kids that are thinking about the rules. And I think about in these therapy sessions, we might think about things like how a teacher grades, or the dress code, or length of classes, and just I'm trying to think of some other things that come up sometimes. And kids want to discuss this stuff, and they want to say, here's what I think is fair about the rule, here's what I think is unfair. And sometimes I think when these music kids I have break rules, it's not so much that they're doing it to get the attention or to try to be the class clown or to try to withhold or try to have some reputation that's cool or fashionable. I think it's because they're sometimes trying to make a point and maybe just don't have that high school adult mentality yet where they know how to go about it because their brains are still developing. But when I see a lot of the kids in the cafeteria, some of the kids that aren't in my classroom, some of the non-arts kids, just some of the no, how do I explain the actions? They're just kind of immature, um, kind of almost jerk-like sometimes to other kids. They're trying to be cool. They have a reputation to uphold. That's the popular crowd kind of thing, and it's annoying and it's irritating. And sometimes these are kids that I had in sixth grade and didn't continue on with band. And again, it's another story of it's interesting how those kids don't continue. Which I think brings up the next thing is the labels. There's a lot of labeling and cliques that go on in middle school, and this is something that again is a huge topic for me for maybe another podcast as I do some more research on it. But there are some kids that don't join band because they don't want to be a band geek. They don't want to have that label. They're a jock or they're a popular crowd kid, and band isn't what they do. And and that of course when you're in music, when you're in the arts, you're in theater, you're in dance, that stuff doesn't really bother kids at all. And they know it's there, but it's just something that they rise above. It's not something that they're concerned with. And yet some of these other kids, it really is. And they're making decisions based on what's popular and not so much on where their passions lie. And that's unfortunate. And that's something that I'm really impressed with kids who are in music, that those labels don't seem to bother them. I already mentioned maturity. That's another thing. I think that the kids who study the arts develop a level of maturity and are able to kind of grow up faster. And again, every kid at this middle school age that I teach, their brains are still developing. They're still, making silly decisions, sometimes bad decisions. But again, I would be willing to bet the number of kids in music that are going into the office for some kind of behavior referral is much lower. The percentage is much lower of the kids in my classroom than the kids who aren't. And I just think that music plays a role in that. The arts plays a role in that. There's also a kind of pay it forward. The whole competitive thing is something that's huge with me. And I should say I'm a huge sports fan, and I played high school athletics. I love watching professional and collegiate athletics. I love still playing many sports, and I think being competitive is great. It teaches you a lot of lessons in life, and just wanting to be the best is a great thing. Wanting to be the best you can be, and not necessarily trying to beat other people down, but to get you to the point where you're really succeeding and feeling like you're really getting good at something is important. So, but in the music world, there's a saying that one of my friends says that the band always wins, and we do if we all work together. But there isn't a loser. Not very often, especially in the middle school level I do, is it a competition. Now there is some competitiveness, and that's cool. Kids want to be the best flute player in the school. They want to be in the all-state honor band. They want to be, you know, chosen to do this special honor and be in this group, be in our honor band or our garage band, and that's great. But it's a friendly competition, and I think a lot of times kids are starting to learn that they need to take other players who maybe aren't as good at them as them and take them under their wing and be a leader, whether that's a silent leader or a more vocal leader. And then when those kids become older, then they do the same, and it becomes this pay it forward kind of thing. So I think that's really cool. My daughter's in here watching my podcast. Hi, Abby. You want to say hi to the listeners? Maybe not. So I can see her head there, right there. Hi, Abby.
Hello.
There she is. All right. So I'm going to keep doing my podcast, and I'll be done in just a few minutes. Okay, Abs? So anyway, I see that a lot. But here's the last thing, and this is the last part of my podcast, and that is that, again, it comes right back to the kindness. And I see a lot of kindness out of these kids who are involved in the arts. And Again, not that the kids in the arts aren't kind, but one thing I noticed this year, a group of there's always a group of students in eighth grade that started in band and no longer were, and I just watched some of the interactions that they have with other students that I never had in band, and I almost feel like, why did you leave? Why did you leave? Some of the things that you're having to deal with, kids who aren't treating you. I mean, these are still really good kids, I think, that I don't have anymore that I used to. But some of the things that I see them having to deal with from other students, being called names, being not treated with respect, this kind of really immature, flirtatious behavior that some of the kids have in eighth grade, and that I don't see very much at all out of my music kids. But I just feel bad that they have to deal with this. And I'm like, why did you leave? Why did you leave this group of friends where it's more respectful? There's a lot more kindness. And I guess the last thing I would say is joy. There's just a lot of joy in my room every day. And not that we don't struggle, not that we don't have issues with depression and anxiety, not that we don't go through the everyday battles of life, of friendships breaking up, and the struggle of making new friends, and dealing with grade issues, and things at home, and dealing with the whole growing up and wanting to be independent yet still wanting to act like a kid at times. I mean, we have that everywhere. But some of the things I see in middle school go beyond the normal things that I wish kids would have to deal with, and things that really kids don't have to deal with. And sometimes I almost feel like in the music room, we're going down a road, going down a journey that is more fun, that's more joyful, that is more respectful. And it doesn't say that we're not dealing with issues and that we're not growing from problems that come up. I'm not saying we're trying to shelter people or anything like that. I mean, it's important for us to go out in life and know what issues we have to deal with. But I just don't like the issues that kids have to deal with that I see in the hallways and see in the cafeteria. Again, some of those things I mentioned, a lot of the swearing, a lot of the inappropriate behavior, a lot of the just hitting each other, not like fights, but not treating each other with respect, just poor language choices, cases of bullying, just things like that are just not things that you should see in a school, in my opinion. And they're things that are going to happen because there are just always going to be some kids like that, that maybe just don't have the support at home, or whatever the case may be. But I think that a lot of times in music, we can help kids in that area, and we can have more success with those kids. So I'm rambling, and it's probably because I don't know exactly what I'm going to say. So here's some questions. And number one of my goals this summer is to research this topic and to see what's out there on this topic. I know there's some stuff out there, and I'd like to contribute to that. What makes kids this way? What makes my observations? These are simply observations. They're opinions. Why are my observations like this? Am I biased? Do other people see this? Does music really turn kids into a more positive direction, or is it that kids are predisposed to this positive direction due music? What came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Should all kids be in the arts? If the results are so positive, why don't we have all the kids in the arts? And again, I didn't want to devote this podcast to that topic, but it's a question. And would the kids that have some of these more, inappropriate, disruptive behaviors be better off if they were in a music class, or would it just make the music class worse and it wouldn't help at all? I don't know. I do know. I have some opinions on that too, but I don't have enough time to share those right now. Would the arts classes have an impact on the school as a whole? And again, I'm not talking about grades and test scores, but would it have an impact on the school? Boy, it's a really, really complex topic. And I'm really glad you tuned in for this first session here. Having a couple technical difficulties here. There we go. Hi, I'm back. But anything, some things to think about. And if you have any comments, I'd love to hear about it on Twitter. You can comment right here on my YouTube site. And I'm going to be back again next week and hopefully do one of these every week and talk a little bit more on other topics. Again, Second Floor Therapy. My Twitter, again, is at Eric Songer. The Instagram site is hashtag second floor, or sorry, not hashtag, but just Second Floor Therapy. And again, the blog is ericsonger.blogspot. And I'm going to try to make these a little more professionally done in the future. The theme song will be a little bit better, at least the quality. And hopefully the podcast will be a little bit more, less rambling going on like I did near the end of this one. But I just wanted to get these off the ground, and thank you for tuning in. And I'll just end every podcast like this in saying that teaching is living the dream, at least for me. And if I can impact just one life, I've made a difference. And my job as a teacher is to be as much of a positive influence and a realistic influence on kids as possible. And relationships are the number one thing, and everything else comes after that. The subject area is obviously important, but we need to do a great job as teachers impacting kids in a positive way. And so, as one of my favorite teachers of all times, Mr. Downs, says, let's go change some lives. Have a great week, everybody, and thanks so much for tuning in to the very first Second Floor Therapy podcast.